On this episode of China Unscripted, a tell-all book into how business is really done in China. The Chinese Communist Party does not want you to read it. Welcome to China Unscripted. I'm Chris Chappell.
I'm Shelley Zhang.
And I'm Matt Ganesha.
And joining us today is Desmond Shum, author of the new book Red Roulette, an inside story of wealth, power, corruption, and vengeance in today's China. Desmond and his ex-wife Whitney Duan did business with the highest levels of the Communist Party elite, until one day in 2017, the party disappeared Whitney with no explanation. Desmond's book talks about their rise and fall and exposes China's hidden corruption. Desmond, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Desmond, your new book, your new memoir, Red Roulette, just came out. Why do you think the Chinese Communist Party is so afraid of the book?
I think it's the first time, really it's the first time somebody have that intimate interaction with them actually come out to tell a story. So, same as your program, Unscripted story by the CCP, right? Yeah.
Well, you had like firsthand knowledge, and you were there as, the West kind of, the whole economic buildup of China. You saw that all happening.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the things interesting is, as I have said, my rise mirrored the rise of China.
Well, and on that topic, I know the Chinese Communist Party put a lot of pressure on you to make sure, or to try and convince you not to publish this book. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
The Friday before, Wall Street Journal and Financial Times both published a story on on her situation and of my upcoming book.
On your ex-wife?
Yes, yeah, Whitney's situation and my upcoming book. And then she called me. I got a call. She called my cousin, and then she called my mom because it was middle of the night on Sunday morning. So the two of them text me and say, well, Whitney called them and asked me to call her back. So that was...
Which was unusual because the Communist Party had detained your ex-wife. How many years ago was that?
4 years ago. I picked the publishing day of my book, to be on the anniversary of her 4th year's disappearance.
Yeah. Why did they detain her again?
Nobody knows. They actually even never acknowledged they have taken her. So her parents, I kept in touch with her parents. Her parents, never heard a word of them from the government. I keep telling them, you should maybe try to go to the police, just say, well, we have a missing person, and see what's the reaction. But they were too afraid. They didn't ever go to the police. And then her mom, ring her phone every day. And obviously the phone line was dead.
So she just disappears, no explanation. And you two have a young son who was 8 years old at the time, I believe.
Right.
You haven't heard anything from her.
Nobody have.
Yeah, until now, right before your book gets released.
That's right.
What did she say to you?
Well, she actually, we asked her to talk to my son. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. I wake up very early, like 5:30. I call her at 6. So I first asked her to speak to our son, and I wake him up. So he hasn't heard from her for 4 years. So that was a bit, that was a touching moment actually. She was asking him, "How tall are you? What's your weight now? How are you doing in school?" And then afterwards, she asked to speak to me separately. And then she asked me to cancel the book launch. It's on Tuesday, but that was Sunday. And then she asked me to cancel the book launch.
Did she say why she wanted you to cancel it?
No. She didn't say why. I know she did just say, I should cancel it.
I wonder how she heard about that book in the 4 years she was disappeared for.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm actually surprised. The Bureau. That's two things. Kind of one is stupid, and one is surprise. Stupid part is like, some bureaucrats just in Beijing, they must imagine that, you can disappear the book like China, right? In a snap of a finger, books are coming off the bookshelf across China. I mean, you call me on Sunday, the book's supposed to come out on Tuesday. Now the books are already in the bookstore or on the way to bookstore. Even I want to do anything, it's beyond my hand. So it's kind of ridiculous to even make that request. And then surprise is looking back, it's really surprising. They are, for once they're acting so quick, so efficiently. The articles come on Tuesday, on Friday, and then should appear within a day.
Yeah, I mean, if you could have pulled the book, would you have?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I didn't start the book for publishing. I mean, I started a book a year after her disappearance as a gift for my son. And I wasn't thinking of publishing it because, I know how personally costly it will be, if I publish something like that. So I was just writing a book because my son was, getting 9 years old. He'd go online. He searched about his mom because she wanted to know who she is, what she have done, why she has been disappeared. So that was that, so I said, well, instead of you getting all the rumors off the internet, let me give you a gift that's my account of who we are and what we have done. And then in my view, it's, you can stand up tall and nothing to be ashamed of. That was my starting point of writing the book.
Well, what was the story you wanted to tell your son in the book?
I would just, I think I would just want to say things I see it, say things what I experience, and what, just lay it all out. As you probably, as you have read the book, and I'm not really making accusation on, this and that. I'm just saying this is what happened. This is what I done. This is what I saw. This is what I experienced. This is what I feel at the time.
And clearly that really threatens the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, apparently so.
Yeah. Now, you had said earlier that your rise mirrored the Communist Party's financial rise. Could you explain a bit about what you mean by that and some of the specific experiences that you've had over the last couple of decades in China?
I think, I went to China, start traveling to China in the early 90s. And, I was the first batch of private equity professionals going to China. I was working for a US firm. And at the time, I remember, we were mostly investing in foreign company going to China. And then we were trying to invest into private enterprises in China. But at the time, it's tiny. All the companies are tiny. I mean, in the early 90s, if they do like a couple millions in revenue, a private company, that's considered sizable, sizable companies. And today, obviously, you look at, Evergrande, right? You're talking about 2 trillion RMB, so what, 300 million of debt, right?
Right.
300 billion.
Yeah, it's a really 300 billion of debt. It's just a very different scale now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that I know as you were doing business in China, you were actually pretty well politically connected.
Yeah, well, it all. When I first started, I wasn't. I was just, this foreign educated kids from Hong Kong coming back to the homeland and then trying to do something. And I moved to Beijing in '97. The company, the U.S. company, actually moved me to Beijing to run their office in Beijing and Shanghai. And I left the company in 2000 and sort of tried my hand in the entrepreneurial rank. And it's after meeting Whitney, that's when I sort of seeing what's behind the curtain and behind the doors. By the time I met her, I had been running around in China for 10 years, right? I mean, I've been, doing business in China for 10 years. I mean, we did not small deals, right? I mean, we invest, I was involved in the first internet. It's still listed. It's the first Chinese tech company listed on NASDAQ. and I was involved in that. So I mean, I have plenty of experience doing business in China by that time. But until I met her, as I lay out in the book, I mean, I don't really know how to speak to this group of people. I mean, they have a lot of coded languages. I don't really know how to behave. I was behaving just like, a regular person would behave in a free world. But actually, you go into a room with this group of people, everything changed. You speak a different kind of language. You sit differently. You behave differently. You knock your wine glasses differently with them. It's an entire different experience. And then until somebody sort of introduce you to that world and guide you along the process, you wouldn't able to do it.
Where do you think that different behavior comes from?
It comes from, I think, I believe is the Communist Party is a very hierarchical society and a structure. Everything go by political power. And then every rank has a different level of political power. And then it's paying respect to their power.
What's an example of that?
Like a simple thing, it's like in the Chinese society in general, you will say, well, the elderly are the respected person, right? Like a family gathering, you will have the elderly sitting at the top of the table, right? I mean, that's just Chinese culture. But you go into that room, let's say you have 10 person dinner. The seating is basically go according to the ranking. And it's very, very specific. Everybody know where exactly they should sit. And then you have a couple of people sort of being modest, the lower ranking officials being modest and then trying to fight for the last seat, say the most humble seat, so to speak, around the round table. And then you have that. But everybody know who should sit on which seat.
So it's kind of like a subversion of traditional Chinese culture. It's then now based on Communist Party hierarchy and ranking.
Yeah.
I know people talk a lot about how important guanxi is in business dealings in China, relationships. What was your experience with that?
It is shocking, and then in a way, in shocking it is how, what actually does that mean? How that guanxi is actually built? Because you got a lot of people, foreigners coming into China claiming they have quote unquote guanxi with this and that. And then you have this, Hong Kong people coming to China and then they have guanxi with this and that, and then to an average person, it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, he has a photo shot with that person. Oh, yeah, he actually went to the dinner with that person. And they assume that's some kind of guanxi. It's actually absolutely not. If you see in the book, I mean, it is very, very different type of relationship. In a way, to build guanxi with power, you need to submerge your humanity. You need to put yourself down to serve that person at the top. And then you're trying to anticipate their wishes and then do better than the next guy who is also trying to curry favor from that person. So it is a very humbling experience, to say the least.
It sounds very dehumanizing.
It is very dehumanized. There's no such a thing as like human to human.
Wow. So like, how do people have to sacrifice their humanity for this?
You put other person's interests ahead of yourself in all situations. You're trying to anticipate what would they possibly like, and you get there and prepare for them before they ever arrive. And then and then it's not just that person. It's everybody. That person may be like his son-in-law, okay, or his son. Is like, okay, his son want to get to just came back. Let's say, give example. Like the son that just or the daughter just went to Western education, went to Harvard, just came back. And then you're trying to. That's a 20-something-year-old, right? And then you're trying to build a relationship with that person because if you do that and help that boy or the girl, his father gonna like it. So you're gonna like have coffee with that person with their kid, and it's like, oh, what do you want? Oh, you want to get into a PE firm? Let me find you a job in a PE firm. Oh, maybe you want to, 2 years from now, you want to build a PE firm by yourself. Maybe let us help you. It's like all of those things. It's it's this kind of things is they call it, that's the real guanxi. It's like a completely different type of relationship, is it? You're trying to sort of like merge into their family, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I could see that actually ending up making the business environment in China much worse. Like if you're constantly hiring people who aren't actually knowledgeable or skilled, just hiring them because of their connections, that would result in people being in positions of power that shouldn't be there.
Well, that's like a course of doing business. You build in, redundancy, and then you have you hire another person to do the real job.
Got it.
Yeah, I remember that whole was it JP Morgan a few years ago that had that scandal with like just hiring a bunch of princelings?
Oh, the Sons and Daughters program.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that was a little too blatant.
Yeah.
And they got them in trouble. But from what you're saying, this is basically how it works, right?
That's how it works. I mean, JP Morgan, let's say they want to get into IPO sponsorship with a major state-owned enterprise. That son and daughter can call on his parents or his uncles and say, well, get me a meeting with the CEO of the state-owned enterprise. My boss wants to meet that guy. And that's a meeting that, other bankers wouldn't be able to do. And that's what you're paying the kids for.
You mentioned in the book that Whitney, your ex-wife, really learned how to build these kinds of relationships and how to kind of handle and deal with Chinese officials pretty early on. How did she get that experience, and what did she do that kind of led to her like really rapid rise in Chinese business?
I think, as many things in life, a lot of coincidence and it happens together, and then it comes together and it becomes something else at the end of it. She came from a very, very humble background. I mean, I came from a humble background. My parents are both secondary teachers. I mean, her situation even worse. I mean, she come from basically countryside in Shandong. And her parents didn't believe she can get into university. They sent her to a vacation school to be a car repairing mechanic. And then she believed she can do it. She studied on her own, and then took the exam twice, the school entrance, university entrance exam twice, and get into the university. And what happened afterward is really prepare her, for what happened, for what happened 20 years later. Is she was a star student in a university. She graduated top of the class, and then the university asked her to stay and become a secretary to the president of the university. And that's a military. It's a university related to the military. So she very on gets accompanying the president of the university, meeting with the seeing how meetings are done at the senior official level, and then from there she got seconded to be a junior bureaucrat in the county. So she spent, I think, 2-3 years there. And at that level, at that situation, she get to see how sort of most, how the system work at the bottom, right? I mean, the county level, how the officials relate to each other, how things actually get done on the ground. And in her situation, the head of the county actually was arrested for corruption and a lot of backstabbing, according to the story she told me. And then she just got really disappointed and disillusioned by how the system actually works and how corrupt it is. And then she decided she wanted to try her luck in a commercial work. And then she started her career with, again, a real estate development company belongs to the military. In the 90s, military engaged in all sort of commercial activities because the state was bankrupt. The military was making money just to support themselves. So from that level, she also, she also get to, one, you should get to learn about real estate development. The other thing is how the state-owned enterprises work. So all those experiences come together, so enable her to hone her skill in, networking at the most senior level in Beijing a decade later.
Well, it's interesting how you kind of talk about how she had to learn how guanxi works within the context of the Chinese Communist Party, because that kind of flies in the face of the idea that, like, oh, this is something from traditional Chinese culture. It's obviously not. It's something that you have to learn, even if you are a person from mainland China. It's something really just awful and foreign that's kind of forced upon you.
Yeah, it is. It exists in the context of Chinese culture, but it's a complete different thing. It's peculiar in its own sense. So it has a background and context of the Chinese culture, but it has been twisted to fit the system.
And so it must be very challenging for any kind of foreign businessman coming into this environment, even coming from Hong Kong.
Oh, yeah.
Coming into this environment and trying to figure out how this game is played.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, that's why, I believe the book will be very interesting for somebody, even, if somebody want to do business in China in today, now I'll show you how the game is actually played.
Well, that's the key. So the big thing is, like you were saying, that back in the day, a lot of the PLA controlled a lot of the businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically from the 90s, 2000s, there was a sudden swell of so-called private Chinese companies.
Mm-hmm.
But really, how private can any company be in China?
Yeah, I think it's very, we a lot of times the West and use the same term on a Chinese company, and the Chinese use the same term as the West on their own situation. Actually, they are referring to very, very different things. I think the West is some sort of naivety, because the calling, the name, the calling sounds the same, and it must be the same thing. And the Chinese, actually, I think there is a part on the Chinese of, I would say, intentional misrepresenting. So, as you just saying, that a private enterprise, what's so private about a Chinese company? In the eye of the party, you all belong to the state. And a conscious and subconscious level, all entrepreneur is aware of their risk.
And when you started running your own private equity in the early 2000s, right?
No, 90s.
90s. So like...
90s with the US company, and then I'll go on our own after 2000.
Yeah. So like when you started going on your own, what was your awareness like? Did you feel like you were starting a totally private company and then realized that it couldn't be private, or was there some other change in your understanding?
I was getting my introduction of the real practice of China. At the time when I first started, at the beginning of it, I was doing a telecom software company, and then you're starting to deal with the officials in this state-owned telecom companies, and you're starting to get an education of, okay, this is how things are done.
But you were coming into China essentially as an outsider, right?
Yes.
But the Communist Party, in their view, your telecom company still belonged to the state at some level, right? In their view.
In their view is, you are private as long I allow you. And if I need to, let's say, conscript you for the cause of the state, that's just a snap of finger and a decision on my part.
So you have to do it, otherwise you get, what, shut down?
No, they just replace you with somebody else.
Or you can be disappeared. Clearly that's an option.
Obviously.
I mean, when you started getting into real estate development,
Yeah.
this is something that's interesting to me because so much of the wealth in China now is like built on real estate development, and I think a lot of people don't really understand how that works. Could you explain to us a little bit about how like that kind of real estate transaction works? So what's the role of these Chinese Communist Party officials and their families in this?
Well, first of all, I think real estate, it's a peculiar asset class in the situation in China, which is very different from the rest of the world. I mean, the rest of the world, you have all sort of financial assets to put your savings and your incomes into. But in China, essentially, because the stock market has been so volatile, and then it's not really, it's not related to fundamental analysis. It's so volatile, it's completely policy driven, and there's so many crashes happen in the past. The general public just don't want that money to put into the stock market, and then China doesn't really have a debt market to say, and so what happened was that almost all individuals, put their money into real estate, because that's the only asset class that's widely available, and then so real estate becomes almost like a mechanism for people to save their deposits, to save their money, and then almost like a deposit. So in that sense, the real estate is a very, very different asset class. It's from the rest of the world. In terms of as a developer, I mean, it is an industry that has that is heavily regulated. In the book I gave example. I did one project. I need 157 seal approval just to complete that project, and each seal approval, it comes from one bureaucrat, and every one of them I need to work on. So it's a very, very heavily regulated project, and then it's completely at the form of the government in many cases.
But like to get those 157, official seals, what do you have to do?
You have to, as I said, you have to submit yourself to the power in front of you. I gave example. I need to drink a bottle of Maltai every meal for for years.
A bottle?
Yeah, that's like half a liter.
How did you survive?
Half a liter of 53% proof liquor, and then I have I have a team of employees. They do nothing but to entertain, serve those bureaucrats. That's just the way it is for us.
That's incredible.
Well, I know you mentioned, I think in your book, that 2008 was a year that you felt things changed. What happened?
Yeah. 2008, I think, really is a watershed moment for China. I think what happened was, I think before the financial crisis, there was a lot of the debate in the society at large, and very often at the top of the leadership level, is not about whether we want to be like the West or we're going to go the route of West, where the model copy the model of the West or not. It's more about at what pace are we going to go along on that route. And the financial crisis really changed that. I think from that moment, society at large, and also the leadership definitely, is looking at it and say, well, look at the entire world. They are crashed and burning. And look at us. We are doing well. And then if not for us holding the exchange rate, the RMB exchange rate steady, Asia would have gone down. So, we are sort of the savior of the world in a sense. And also, they revalue the situation. They say, well, maybe the West model is not that great at all. And then maybe our model is not that bad. So that really changed the perception, the belief of how they look at the West and how they look at their own development and economic model. And another part of it is their view of the state-owned enterprise. in the past, it always has been let's retrench the inefficient state-owned enterprise and let the private enterprise and the foreign company advance in the economy. So that's the general sense of that. But the financial crisis really, because at that moment they say, well, okay, I want to, inject another 400 billion into the economy, and I will do it. And then obviously the quickest way to do it is through the state-owned enterprise, because the state-owned enterprise basically, they say, well, okay, the bank's gonna give you 100 million tomorrow, and then in a week you're gonna start spending that 100 million, right? They can give direct orders like that. And then as private enterprise, you cannot, right? You have to sort of put out policies, roundabout encouragement, encourage company to invest and all that. It's a very different way of management, right? So they say, well, okay, well, maybe it's very important. It is very important for us to keep the state-owned enterprise having a central role in the economy, because we can actually direct them at the snap of a finger. So all this come together, and then always, underneath all of that, the bureaucracies always have a tendency, have an urge to exert their influence, exert their power, right? I mean, if a bureaucrat, I'm now sitting in ministry, all I do is look, directing, helping sort of the private enterprise to advance. What's my power? Where's my power? The moment they say, well, but tomorrow onward, you have two state-owned enterprise under your direction, and then you can direct them how to spend 500 million. Hey man, he's all for it. He's all for it. So that's all, the system always baked in, have this urge to assert yourself in the economy. So all that all that come together. After the financial crisis, things really start changing.
So basically, it went from a sort of shadowy control of the Chinese Communist Party over private enterprises to just more direct party control.
Yeah, I think it went from a reluctantly letting you guys grow to a state of like, okay, I'm gonna reassert myself. You guys gonna come on. You guys need to retreat. Put in a retreat. You guys should step back a bit.
Yeah. You had an interesting anecdote about having a party secretary in your company, right? Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, after the financial crisis, they never before. I mean, they start. I have a joint venture with the state-owned enterprise. So, although I'm the majority shareholder, and then I was the CEO, they requested that I put in a party apparatus.
Requested?
Well, I mean, how can you say no, right? I mean, it's like, and then they put in up your apparatus, and then they appointed a party secretary to my company. And all of a sudden, I need his consent on many corporate matters, and they change dynamic of management.
Yeah. What are some specific business decisions that you had to make differently than you would have otherwise because of pressure from the party secretary?
Everything. I mean, he, I need to consult with him on everything, because although he doesn't have an official title to be the manager of the company, you upset him, and he's going to run back to his superior, and then he's going to create trouble for me. So trying to sort of make it almost like not a co-CEO per se, but at least a junior co-CEO.
And so like you had to develop this relationship with him as well to just make friends with him, right? And make sure that he was agreed with you. Geez, I just can't imagine having that like in our small company. I'm just imagining like the U.S. government or like one political party says like, oh, you have to now have this person deciding like what episodes you're going to produce or what topics you're going to cover. Like that's insane to me. But it sounds like that's just the norm of what happens in China.
Yes.
Well, that and bottles of Motai.
Yeah.
Oh man. How how does the party apparatus how do the families of party officials come into this? Like we talked a little bit about, the private equity having to hire like the sons and daughters of Chinese officials.
Right.
Like how much of the wealth is in family members of the Communist Party?
What happened is basically, some of the family actually designed in such a way. I mean, I call it I call it red aristocrats in my book, and then it's go by bloodline, in like the medieval, aristocrats, and they some of the family actually designed in such a way. So one, like the daughter going to the private business or going to run a business, and the son going to political system. So the family has one leg on each side of the game, and then a lot of times, I mean, so to your question, I think every government official or every bureaucrat has their finger in some pot. I remember like 30 years ago when I started doing business in China, you used to have this joke. You line up, China has a quote unquote very stringent punishment for corrupt officials, right? So like 30 years ago, we have this joke, like you line up all the Communist Party members against the wall, you shoot them one after another, you're shooting too few of them. You're missing a whole bunch of corrupt officials. But you shoot every one of them, you're probably shooting a few too many, because some of them actually may not be corrupt. But by the party standard, today's world, you shoot all the 95 million members, I don't think anybody would be mistaken.
Wow.
Sounds like a very, very functional system.
That has been the way it is.
This is why, Xi Jinping's so-called anti-corruption campaign, and I think the Western media often frame it as going after corruption. But basically, if every party member is corrupt, then clearly his campaign has nothing to do with corruption, and merely he's using corruption as like a legal tool to go after the specific people he wants to go after.
I think I have a few things to say. One is his starting point when he started this is definitely a political cleansing program to assert his power and grab power from different factions and from possible political rivals. That's definitely a starting point.
Some of those did try to do a coup against him, so yeah.
And then, but he also, I do believe he does want to have a cleanse of the system to us at sort of the junior level, so to speak, right? But if you look at the history of 70 years of Communist Party, this kind of campaign has been going, having recycled itself and every few years, every decade or two. It has always, has this, but it never has a lasting effect, because the structure of this is baked into the system. Like, just give you an example, the Centennial Party celebration, right? Celebrating the Communist Party, the CCP's 100 years anniversary. A lot of reports about this 7 busload of red aristocrats went on to Tiananmen Square and stand beside Xi Jinping and watched the parade, right? That 7 busload, they are the cream of the crop of the red aristocrat. They have, if you look at them, they have no official title. They are just supposedly quote unquote average citizen. They have no specific contribution you can name to the city, to the society, or to the country. The only reason they can go on top of the Tiananmen Square and stand next to the party chairman and the president of China as almost equals is by bloodline. The only reason they have this kind of position is kind of bloodline. So they are the true, I actually would call them the true owner of China. A lot of people, have this say, oh, Communist Party this and Communist Party that. Communist Party is made up by people. These are the people who actually own the Communist Party.
It's interesting. Like, you really frame it as like just systemic corruption within China, within the Chinese Communist Party. I think I know why they didn't want you to publish your book.
Go ahead.
Well, for all of that,
Well, I mean, I think there is something really, like you said, nobody's kind of shown the nitty gritty of how to do business in China and how it works, especially from, the real estate side and talking about having to, develop these relationships with all these officials and what you have to do to get your 157 chops, right, or your seals, right? Like, it's really interesting because I think there's still this naivety from, American businesses, entire industries who go into China and they're like, oh, well, we're just gonna first it was, this industry, then it was, like manufacturing, then, private equity, now Hollywood, now it's just like wave after wave of these companies being like, oh, we can do it. It's just going to be easy. And then kind of but like nobody talks about what it's actually like because they don't want to harm their chances of doing business in China.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Although, maybe I can look at your book as like a how-to guide, because now I know how to do business in China. All I have to do is sacrifice my humanity, develop relationships with, hundreds and hundreds of party officials and make friends with their children, drink enormous amounts of Motai liquor until I'm almost dead. And I feel then I'll make it.
That's a very good go-to guy, and it actually works.
But I feel like the point of your book is it doesn't matter, even if you do all of that, if you do all of the right things, it's still going to come back to bite you because maybe the people you are developing guanxi with, they're in power now, but maybe someday in the future, a rival faction is in power, and then suddenly you're on the outs because you're connected to the wrong people.
So you're saying I should have read his book to the end?
That's why. I mean, every entrepreneur in China know the game they're playing is extremely risky, and the risk is not, nothing to do with. It's not business risk. It's completely political. And just my employees, a middle class employee, the moment they start having some cash, they open an account in Hong Kong and stash some of that away. And then the bigger your business, the more you stash away, because you say, well, there's a lot of risk inherent in a lot of political risk inherent in this system. I don't know when they're gonna, take away my private property. Let's stash them away stash them away far away from the hand of the CCP.
So how much of this wealth is ending up outside of China and invested in the U.S. in real estate or other businesses?
I wouldn't know the number, but it's a tremendous amount.
How about you yourself when you started to make a lot of money in China?
Yeah. I showed it in the book. One of the conflict point between me and my ex-wife was how much we should, diversify away from China. She believed China has a brighter future. We should concentrate our bets. And I have a different view. So that's one of the friction point of our marriage.
I think that's one of the sad things about the story of your ex-wife is that, she obviously was a very motivated person. She obviously cared a lot about China, tried to rise up through the political ranks, thought that was corrupt. She seemed like she really, you would think a normal government would like somebody like that. Instead, she ends up disappeared.
I think that's one of the saddest part of, our experience is we really, if I may use the word patriotic, we really want to build something with China and for China. As I, talk about in the book, very early on, early 2000s, when we first start making some serious money, we start going to charity. I mean, in China, charity, there's no tax credit for it. I mean, it's a direct deduction of your net worth. And we have been over the years, sponsor academics. We give the library to Tsinghua. To my knowledge, today I'm still an honorary trustee of Tsinghua University. And then we really want to, help China, build China, and this is what we end up with. And this is just, it's a lesson for a lot of people, I think.
When was the moment that you became disillusioned?
I think it's 2-3 years into Xi Jinping's first term, so it's 2014. Well, I mean, it starts earlier than that. It starts, when I talk about the party apparatus, the party, eventually that I sold that company, and one of the main reasons I sell that company is it's just unmanageable. You can run a business like in that kind of situation, and then I may as well get some money out and then let's do something else. So I'm starting to have second thoughts about this path we are on. And then you look at Xi Jinping's situation, I remember vividly, I think the first year in his administration, I was a member of, CCPCC or something like that, the Political Consultative Party. I went to they call a meeting with many of us. And then essentially they said, well, okay, political consultative, supposedly there's a very prestigious political setup.
I mean, Jackie Chan is in it.
We're supposed to advise and sit on, advise the government or whatever. But basically, he's saying that, basically, democracy is not on the agenda by any means. Essentially, that's what he's saying. And then you listen to that, you're like, whoa, I thought we are going that way. Obviously, that door is shut and permanently shut.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you were on the CPPCC, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. Council? Conference. A lot of acronyms.
Yes.
So, but you're the only person we've ever had on our show that was in the CPPCC. So what is that like?
We are voting machines. Right? You go in there and everything passed by, let's say you have 600 something members. Everything, you have maybe 2 or 3 absentee votes, and then the rest is all agree, right? It's just like a motion comes up, you raise your hand. A motion comes up, you raise your hand. It's just a voting machine.
How do you all get so unified?
Well, because they structure the meeting and conference voting in such a way. So every time, a motion comes up, they say, okay, if you agree, raise your hand. Right? It's a public vote. If you disagree, you raise your hand. It's like, hey, man, they're looking at you. Who's going to disagree? Right? And then there are a few things in a year that say supposedly secret ballot. But they make sure everybody is a fixed lineup. It's like one lineup, you cannot say, well, I'm going to vote first. That's no such a thing. You're going to line up to the next guy, the guy before, and then you must vote after he has voted. Then they can retrace it back to you, whatever you're going to vote on, right? So essentially, your vote is open to the party to look at and examine. And then if you say no, well, you know what's going to come down next.
Yeah. So besides the, being told what to vote, I mean, are there other privileges or, I guess,
what were the parties
downsides
like?
of being in the CPPCC?
What were the parties like? Is that what you said?
The parties. A lot of Mo Tai, I believe.
It's more like a social prestige. It's like you're like a recognized person of the society by the party. It's more like that. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of, I belong to the Hong Kong group. A lot of Hong Kong people in general actually don't understand the game very well. And a lot of them, they thought, getting into that will actually enable them to make guanxi. It's like, well, you don't know what game you're playing.
Did you meet Jackie Chan?
Or Yao Ming?
No. You know what? Not Jackie Chan. Who the heck would I care about Jackie Chan? It's I met Jack Ma when 1998, the first time he came out to raise money.
What was that like?
He was a very cocky guy. I remember I have a coffee with him, and then he was the coffee shop's window actually sees the building Goldman Sachs office was. And he was telling me, Goldman just agreed to give me $5 million. And I didn't even give them a business plan. I want 3 from you. And then obviously you're not going to get a business plan, right? I was like, what the heck is this guy, what he's talking about. How I'm going to go back to my office, brings my boss. We're going to invest $3 million into this company, and then nobody going to give a business, and then we're not going to get a business plan. It's like, what the heck is he talking about?
So did you invest with him?
No, we didn't.
Well, you missed your opportunity, and then you were probably glad later, right?
Yes and no. I mean, what happened actually in between, the 5 years, in the 5 years after that, I have coffee with him, this company almost bankrupt twice. And then, I remember that, I was talking to the Goldman people. So we invested eventually privately, in this all famous, infamous Ping An situation, right? We invested in Ping An Insurance. And Goldman was investor in Alibaba and an investor in Ping An. They actually want to sell Alibaba, but there's no ticker in the market. So they end up selling the Ping An share. So, it's who knows, situation, things happen. So it's history play out very differently from anybody can foresee.
Well, I know you had some connections to the former premier of China. That's who he was, right?
Wen Jiabao.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that because that ties into a lot of the factional stuff that's happening in China.
Which part of it you would like to talk about?
Well, just how you got into that, how that connection was created, and what that got you or what that cost you in the end.
I think what happened. Well, what happened was Whitney had a dinner with we call her Auntie Zhang, right, the wife of Wen Jiabao, and so they struck up the relationship from there, and then Wen Jiabao, Auntie Zhang, they are not red aristocracy, they are not red aristocrat, they are like they are commoner rise through the rank. So when people in that kind of situation, they don't really have a clan, so to speak. So the red aristocrat, because they basically grow up in Beijing, they go to specific schools, so they have a network from their childhood. Their relatives already in the system, so they have a web of relationship in the system. And Wen Jiabao, his family rise through the rank. They don't have a clan to speak of. So at the early stage, so we become part of that clan, and then we do business together, we become business partners. So that if actually you are like a red aristocrat, they already have a built-in clan life, from history. It's actually it's very difficult, to be involved in those clans. It's a different situation. But yeah, Wen Jiabao's case, what happened was we built a relationship with the wife and then eventually become a business partner with them.
Yeah. And so what did Wen Jiabao do as your business partner? Like what role did he play in helping you, get deals or do developments or
as I talk about in the book, I actually don't believe he was involved in this, and then he's very aware of what his family is actually doing. He's so damn busy, going to the office and doing what he's supposed to do. What happened was basically when we get into that kind of situation, then I in the book I describe it like that. Air Force, so their family, the Auntie Zhang become the Air Force, so you have a fighter jet, flying above you in the sky. Everybody sort of look at that. Whoa, that's a powerful jet. And then we are the infantrymen, right? We are infantrymen actually doing the execution on the ground, taking real grounds, right? And that's what happened. I think that's a very lively, vivid, sort of description.
I see. And so in exchange for having that protection, or that powerful jet flying overhead, they got part of your business.
Yeah.
Or they got some money from it.
Yeah. They take 30% profit in China.
Wow. That's substantial.
That's, I think that's the may I say, it's the market going rate for situation like that. Which it's just that's what the red aristocrat do.
I like it. It's the Communist Party's market rate.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me that just, there's this anecdote you talk about in the book where just having, Whitney just having Auntie Jiang sitting, like if you're meeting at a restaurant and she's just like sitting there and she doesn't say anything, just knowing that she's there means that she supports the project, which means, the Wen family supports it. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the game. I talk about. We talked about earlier. It's just every move. It's being read into, and then you need to know how to read into the game. Right? I mean, she won't be sitting at any dinner with anybody. Why is she there? Right? I mean, so people who are in the game just seeing her there, it's like okay. And then you listen to what she has to say about the next person. You're like, okay, I'm getting hints here.
Well, considering that is how things are done, what is the significance of when Chinese businessmen or Chinese officials try to make those kind of connections to U.S. officials, like Hunter Biden, for instance, or there's a million of those examples.
Right. I mean, if you just, look at the Communist Party's operation manual, if those, so to speak, right? And the design and started by Mao, right? Because he said that Mao, won the war and then, take over China. He said the key three weapons of, in his eye, to take over China. Number one is United Front. Number two is party apparatus. Number three is military power. Number one is United Front. What does that mean? That means capture opinion leaders, capture elites of the society, sway the opinion of the society. So like Hunter Biden's situation is part of the program of elite capturing. And then it's the same, still the same operating manual. It hasn't changed. It's no accident, like a lot of elites in the West, come out to speak on behalf of China. It's part of the program.
Yeah, like people like Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, right? I mean, he's very just like China's a great country. Everything's going to be great. Triple your investments. But he's been elite captured.
When they arrive in China, they are being presented very, very different China. So that's one side of the game. The other side of the game is they infiltrate all the people around you and then try to use those people to sway your opinion. And don't ever, like a person like Larry Fink, he get into China, he think he's building real relationship with some individuals in China, those people in the know, and then they're feeding him like insider information about China. So he has a real insider knowledge of China. Crap. Those people, I guarantee you, every one of them, after meeting him, go back and write a report.
Oh, that's so dehumanizing. That's the theme.
Well, I mean, it's also just like there's this superiority about it, right? That like, Larry Fink thinks he's going in and getting something, and then like
Captain
on
of
the other
industry.
and the other side, they're like, this guy,
he's such an idiot. We're taking advantage of his greed. He has no idea.
It's a completely he's being when he is in China, he's being completely manipulated. This entire environment around him is man-made for him at that particular point in time.
And unfortunately, he then has a significant influence over the United States, Wall Street,
U.S. government. Yeah. No, great. Are you concerned at all about, what you said in the book? Like now the book's out. They obviously pressured you to not publish. Are you concerned about, any retaliation from it?
A journalist the other day, looked at me and then said, and tell me that, you'll be a markman for the CCP for the rest of your life, right? I mean, I am prepared for it when I decide to publish it, but to have it say it in your face, it's just, it still sends a chill down my spine. well, and then the other thing I have to say is, a party state can lock up a woman for 4 years in a dark cell is capable of all evils.
Well, it was a very brave thing you did to publish the book. The book is Red Roulette. I'll put a link in the description below. Be sure to check it out. It's fascinating. Desmond, thank you so much for joining us today, and hope to have you on again sometime soon.
Yeah. I will. Let me know.
Well, I really learned a lot from that interview and especially his book. For instance, I always thought it was pronounced roulette.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's why you never won any money at the roulette wheel.
Yeah.
You go to Vegas and ask for the roulette table, and people would.
Yeah, and apparently it's not pronounced ballot; it's ballet.
Yeah, but it was that's a really fascinating insight into business, because the 99% of people who are doing business in China, maybe 100% of them and 99% of people who've left still won't tell you what it's really like, because there's so much incentive to just keep that stuff secret.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think on one hand, it's, you've probably had to do some things you're not especially proud of.
Oh, yeah.
Or, you're worried that whatever you did or say could come back. They could still definitely go after you, even if you're outside China, right?
I mean, clearly they have a tendency to make people disappear who are close to you.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting that, obviously they're a little touchy about this if his ex-wife suddenly reappeared and just was like, please don't publish the book.
Yeah. Well, I admire his courage for just publishing it anyway, knowing that there could be a risk to her or to himself. But of course, he's right, because if you give in to what the party wants, you're probably not going to win in the end.
Yeah, I mean, publishing it definitely is better for his wife.
Yes.
Than not publishing it.
Right. I mean, always shine a light in the darkness, even if, the bad guys don't want you to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's super interesting. And, I like how he was like, I'm not really ashamed of anything I've done. I'm willing to put it out there and kind of tell the real story.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great that there is now a book like this that's been published. It's out in the public record.
Mm-hmm. So we definitely recommend that you should check it out if you have the chance. We are putting a link in the description below. It's finally the insider's story that we've been wanting to hear about how business is actually done in China. So once again, thanks for watching. I'm Chris Chappell.
I'm Shelley Zhang.
And I'm Matt Gnezda.
We'll see you next time.